I let my daughter-in-law finish humiliating me in front of 23 relatives at Thanksgiving. Then I stood up, smiled, opened my banking app, and canceled the 5 payments that had been quietly keeping her luxury life from collapsing. The weight of the homemade pumpkin pie in my hands did a little to steady my nerves as I stood on my son's front porch. Through the glass panes of the front door, I could see the chaos inside relatives, laughing, talking, and moving under the bright living room lights. For a split second, I seriously thought about turning around, driving back to my little apartment, and spending the evening alone. But right then, my son Julian spotted me through the window and rushed to open the door. "You made it, Mom," he said, forcing a smile. I stepped inside, and the rich aroma of roasted turkey immediately hit me. My daughter-in-law, Vanessa, sauntered over, took one look at my pie, and snatched it from my hands without so much as a thank you. Her eyes instantly flicked down to my simple handbag. Vanessa was wearing a pricey designer dress and a gold watch that practically blinded you under the dining room lights. For 3 years now, she'd been bragging about her wildly successful online boutique, but I knew better. At the dinner table, everything seemed picture perfect until my niece asked me for some advice on high-yield savings accounts. Before I could even finish my first sentence, Vanessa cut me off, her voice ringing out across the entire room. "Oh, please, Evelyn, stop constantly asking everyone about money. It's getting really embarrassing for the rest of the family." A suffocating silence fell over the room. 23 pairs of eyes stared blankly at me. Julian looked down at his plate, flushed crimson, and didn't say a single word. Nobody defended me. In fact, looking around, I realized they all actually believed it was the begging for financial handouts. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just offered a mild, polite smile, calmly stood up and walked over to the coat closet. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I opened my banking app and looked at the 5 recurring transfers that left my account every single month. Vanessa's car lease, her private health insurance, and 3 credit card minimums. Over the years, I had quietly sent over $60,000 their way just to keep my son's family from going under. 5 taps and every automatic payment was gone. There was no going back. As I put my coat on, a deep, steady calm settled over me. It was done. The next morning, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of black coffee. Soft autumn light came through the blinds of my Boston apartment, throwing long shadows across the table. My laptop was open in front of me instead of my usual notepad. I pulled up a blank Excel spreadsheet and started going through every wire transfer Vanessa had asked for, every so-called short-term loan. The final number at the bottom of the column was brutal. $62,400. Right on cue, my phone buzzed on the counter. Vanessa. I declined it and flipped the phone face down. Over the next 2 hours, 15 more calls came in, along with a flood of texts that told the whole story of her unraveling. First confusion, then impatience, then pure rage. Why did the payments bounce? Call me back right now. The dealership just called me. I finished my coffee, closed the laptop, and went to the farmer's market like I do every Friday morning. Around 2 in the afternoon, my landline rang. It was Julian, breathless, voice shaking. "Mom, Vanessa is completely falling apart. She says something's wrong with the bank accounts. Did you change something?" "I didn't change anything, Julian," I said, keeping my voice even. "I just stopped paying Vanessa's bills. She told the whole family last night that I was begging for money, so I figured I'd stop embarrassing her." A long, heavy silence. I could almost hear him processing it. "But Mom, you can't just do that," he finally managed. "She has payments due." I felt no guilt, not even a flicker. "She's a grown woman with a highly successful boutique," I said, and hung up. The quiet didn't last. By Saturday morning, Julian was at my door. He looked rough, pale, hair uncombed, like he hadn't slept. He walked in without a word and dropped into the same kitchen chair he'd been sitting in since he was a kid. He stared at his hands and couldn't look at me. "Vanessa hasn't stopped crying for 24 hours, he said quietly. "The repo guys are coming for the car Monday if the lease isn't paid. Mom, she always said the business was doing well." I sat down across from him. I didn't offer coffee. That chapter was closed. Julian, your wife has been buried in debt for 5 years, and I've been quietly covering it because I thought I was protecting you. I kept my voice flat. No drama. I did it because I loved you. But after she humiliated me in front of everyone, I'm done. He swallowed hard. He knew I didn't exaggerate. What am I supposed to do now? He asked. Same as always, waiting for someone else to fix it. Audit her finances, I said, and start facing what's actually true. I got up and opened the front door. He stood slowly, like the weight of years of ignored reality had finally landed on his shoulders at once. When he stepped outside, I locked the deadbolt behind him. No sadness, just relief, quiet and solid. For the first time since losing my husband, I was living entirely on my own terms. Vanessa's whole carefully constructed life was coming apart, and I wasn't going to hold a single piece of it together. Sunday brought her counterattack, right on schedule. She went to Instagram. A relative sent me a screenshot, a black and white photo of Vanessa staring out a window, captioned, "It breaks my heart when family jealousy and bitter resentment tear a happy home apart. Praying for healing during this difficult time." The comments were already full of sympathy from aunts and cousins who had no idea what was actually going on. A year ago, a post like that would have wrecked me. I would have panicked, scrambled to explain myself, tried to smooth everything over. But this time, I didn't say a word. I printed the spreadsheet 3 times, slid each copy into a plain manila envelope, and dropped them in the mail. No note, no explanation, no anger, just the numbers. That afternoon, my sister-in-law Clara called. She was the same woman who'd been giving me pointed looks all through Thanksgiving dinner. "Evelyn, what on earth is going on?" "Vanessa is posting some really strange things online." I kept my voice easy. "I just stopped funding Vanessa's lifestyle, Clara. The receipts are on their way to the family elders right now so everyone can see for themselves." Her tone changed immediately. The condescension disappeared and something closer to panic took its place. "Wait, what do you mean, funding? Check your mailbox tomorrow morning. Enjoy your Sunday, Clara." I ended the call, went to my bedroom, and started packing a bag. With my savings no longer being quietly drained every month, I realized I actually had money to spend on myself. That same night, I booked a solo week in a bed and breakfast in Maine. It was time to start living my own life. By Tuesday afternoon, the confrontation I'd been expecting finally came. I was loading groceries into my trunk when Vanessa appeared in the supermarket parking lot like she'd been waiting for me. Designer sunglasses, expensive boots, and body language that radiated pure hostility. She came straight at me, heels clicking hard against the asphalt, and stopped just inches away. "How dare you," she said, keeping her voice low but barely holding it together. "You are destroying my reputation with this family. What were those letters about?" I closed my trunk and looked at her directly. My heart wasn't racing. I wasn't nervous. "They're my bank statements, Vanessa. You told everyone I was asking the family for money. I just showed them which direction the money was actually moving." "You bitter, malicious old woman," she said, her voice shaking. "Julian will never forgive you for this." "We're supposed to be family," I said calmly. "Family doesn't mean letting someone take from you and insult you to your face. If you'd like to discuss repaying the $60,400 you owe me, I'm open to setting up a payment plan. If not, we have nothing left to talk about." She stared at me like I was a stranger. The quiet, soft mother-in-law who absorbed every insult without flinching was gone. I got in my car, started the engine, and pulled away. In the rearview mirror, she was still standing there, alone in the middle of the parking lot, with no leverage and nowhere to go. 2 days later, someone knocked on my door just before 10 at night. Julian. He looked worse than before. Eyes red, face drawn. He was holding one of the envelopes in his hand. His aunt had apparently passed it straight to him. "Is this real, Mom?" His voice cracked. $6,000 a year just for her credit cards and the car? He sat down at the kitchen table and put his face in his hands. "I pulled the records on our joint accounts," he said quietly. "She lied about everything. Our entire house down payment savings. It's just gone." I sat down beside him, but I didn't reach for his hand. He needed to feel the full weight of this. It was the only way forward. "It's all real, Julian. I thought I was protecting you by covering for her. I was wrong." This is yours to deal with now. She wants me to cash out my 401k to save the car, he whispered. She said if I don't, she's leaving. What are you gonna do? I asked him straight. He looked up, and for the first time in years, I saw something solid in his eyes. I'm not touching my retirement. If she wants to go, she can go. I can't keep living like this. He stood, pulled me into a brief, tight hug, and walked out. His footsteps going down the stairs were heavy, but they had a direction to them that hadn't been there before. I locked the door and took a long, slow breath. The hardest part was just beginning for him, but it was the only path that would ever lead him to becoming his own man. My finances were safe. My boundaries were firm. As weeks turned into months, everything shifted. Vanessa made the rounds trying to get money from other relatives, but my letters had already done the work. No one was willing to step in and bankroll her anymore. Julian took full control of his own paychecks and locked Vanessa out of his accounts completely. The SUV got repossessed. Vanessa was taking the city bus to a retail job she'd picked up at a local department store, a long way from the boutique empire she'd been describing at every family gathering for 3 years. One Saturday, Julian called. He sounded tired but steadier than he'd been in a long time. Mom, Vanessa and I started marriage counseling. We're also working with a financial planner to sort out the debt. She wants to talk to you. She wants to apologize. I thought about it for a moment. She can meet me for a walk in the park on Sunday, but she's not coming into my apartment. My home was my sanctuary now. Nobody who had treated me that way was crossing that threshold. Sunday morning, I met them both at the park entrance. Vanessa was in a plain winter coat, no designer bag, no jewelry catching the light. She looked older and tired, but more like a real person than she ever had before. She kept her eyes on the ground as we started walking. I'm so sorry, Evelyn, she said quietly, the cold wind moving through the bare trees around us. I was arrogant and I was cruel to you. I didn't slow down. I accept your apology, Vanessa, but words don't carry much with me anymore. Actions do. You'll send me $200 from your paycheck on the first of every month until the debt is cleared. It's going to take a long time, but that's the only way we ever build anything back. She nodded. She had nothing left to argue with. The first business day of January, I logged into my banking app and saw a pending deposit, $200. Memo, NV, Cole, payment. I sat with that for a moment. It wasn't about the money. $200 didn't change my life in any practical way. It was about what it meant. For the first time, Vanessa was actually being accountable for something. My week in Maine had been exactly what I needed. Long walks along the rocky coastline in the mornings, evenings by the fireplace with a book. Not a single frantic phone call broke through. Julian rang once, just to let me know they'd moved into a smaller, affordable 2-bedroom apartment and broken the lease on the oversized house they'd never been able to afford in the first place. When I got back, I took Julian out to a quiet little diner near my apartment, just the two of us. He looked good. He'd lost some weight, and there was something present and grounded about him that hadn't been there before. How's work going? I asked. Really well, Mom. I just got a promotion, actually. I've been putting in the hours. He smiled, and it was genuine. Vanessa is sticking to the budget, too. It's been a big adjustment for her, but the complaining has stopped. I reached across the table and took his hand. I'm so proud of you, Julian. You took the wheel. The way he looked at me in that moment, I understood something clearly. The hard line I'd drawn hadn't just protected my own peace. It had pulled my son back from the edge of a slow, quiet disaster he didn't even fully see coming. Sometimes the most loving thing you can say is no. By Springs, the family had settled. The gossip had run its course. Relatives stopped choosing sides because the paper trail made the truth impossible to argue with. The woman who had walked into that Thanksgiving carrying a homemade pumpkin pie and nearly turned back at the door, she was gone. In her place was someone who knew exactly what she was worth and wasn't willing to accept anything less. Vanessa's $200 payments came in on the first of every month without fail. I moved every cent into a separate savings account set aside for Julian's kids, whenever and if ever they decided to have them. I never touched a single dollar of it. For Easter, Julian and Vanessa had the family over to their new place. It was a modest apartment in a working-class neighborhood. Versulsan Epratay. Nothing showy, nothing pretend. I was the first to arrive. Vanessa opened the door in a kitchen apron. "Hi, Evelyn," she said, and leaned in for a quiet, respectful hug. "I'm really glad you came. I actually made a coffee cake from your recipe." Walking in, I could feel immediately that something had shifted. The constant pressure to appear perfect, to perform a life they couldn't afford, was simply gone. Julian was in the kitchen washing dishes, relaxed and unhurried. No expensive champagne on the counter, just regular coffee and a pitcher of water. During brunch, I sat back and watched the room. Vanessa moved around attentively, taking care of her guests, completely free of the sharp, dismissive edge she used to carry everywhere. She'd learned something that no amount of money could have taught her. That respect isn't something you put on a credit card. We talked naturally throughout the afternoon. I kept a comfortable distance, enough to hold my boundaries in place. We weren't close friends and probably never would be. But we had found a workable peace, and it was built on something real this time. A full year after that Thanksgiving dinner, I was sitting at my kitchen table again. A pumpkin spice candle burned in the middle of the table, filling the apartment with a warm, familiar smell. My journal was open in my lap, and I'd been flipping back through the past 12 months. On my laptop, the spreadsheet was up, 12 consecutive rows highlighted in green. The remaining balance was still large, but the number had stopped mattering. The process was what mattered. Tomorrow, I'd drive out to Julian and Vanessa's for Thanksgiving. This year, I hadn't baked a thing. Vanessa had specifically asked me to come as a guest only. She wanted to handle the whole dinner herself. It would be a simple meal, I knew that, but it would be honest. No performance, no hidden debts, no quiet bailouts keeping the whole thing standing. I closed my journal and felt something settle in my chest, a calm, steady sense of contentment that I hadn't felt in years. My apartment was my own. My retirement was intact. My son had found solid ground under his feet, and I had learned, finally and completely, that drawing a hard line isn't cruelty. It's self-preservation. It's what real love actually looks like sometimes. The numbers on the laptop screen glowed softly in the dim kitchen. They had never once lied to me. They had helped me pull the truth out into the open when nothing else could. If you asked me today whether I'd do it all over again, I wouldn't need a second to think about it. I'd cancel those 5 payments every single time. Because when everything else is stripped away, a quiet mind and a peaceful heart are the only things worth having. I turned off the light and looked forward to tomorrow.